Coming up, 3 Native writers bring storytelling to light through photography and a traditional legend from a youth perspective. Plus, we meet North Dakota's new poet laureate. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews and headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Omarawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. The United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues wrapped up its 22nd annual session in New York today. The themes of the annual gathering included health and climate change, but those weren't the only issues on the minds of delegates and attendees. ICT's Stuart Huntington reports.
The delegates to the UN's Permanent Forum sought to challenge the international community to address issues important to the Indigenous world. Some attendees also sought to challenge the delegates. One youth leader asked a panel if they were posing the right questions.
What are the panelists doing to move beyond free prior informed consent to free prior informed permission, which will help reiterate our sovereignty and our place of strength?
A delegate from Russia wanted to say he thought a law passed in Tsarist times was more progressive than the 2007 UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, or UNDRIP.
In the year 1822, a law on government of indigenous peoples was introduced in Russia. It was more modern than now the Declaration of United Nations.
A tribal judge, slightly tongue-in-cheek, suggested the world needed more bureaucrats. Then he explained, the world needs more indigenous bureaucrats.
We need people who are of us within the agencies when those agencies make decisions. Probably the best example is the Solicitor General's office, who does the litigation at the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of the United States. And so when we have litigation at the U.S. Supreme Court, there is no voice being heard when they're making the decisions in the room as to strategies and positions.
A delegate from Alaska had some thoughts on fisheries.
The subsistence fishing has basically been cut out because of the crash of the salmon in many of the rivers, and it's a very big problem. So one of the problems with it is the trawlers out in the ocean that scrape up everything, and then they throw away like 1 million pounds every 2.5 days. And I don't like the word subsistence because we want to do better than sustenance. We want to thrive.
And from Formosa, now called Taiwan, came a unifying perspective.
We have a small population, so we might face a little bit smaller issues, but it's all the same thing. All indigenous are facing the same thing these days. Land grabbing, human rights, basic rights for women and girls, basic living struggles.
At the United Nations, Stuart Huntington, ICT News.
A final statement from this gathering is expected in the coming weeks. There is new federal funding available aimed at increasing responsible tourism. The Department of the Interior announced last week that $1 million in funding will be given to Native Hawaiian organizations. Tourism in the state has been a major economic driver, but many Native Hawaiians criticize current tourism models, saying it feels extractive and wrong. This funding is unique in that it will go towards tourism models that focus on natural and cultural resources. Organizations who are applying must prove they will uplift Native Hawaiian culture through visitor demonstrations or activities like perpetuating the Hawaiian language. The Ho'ihi grants are expected to be given to 8 beneficiaries ranging between $50,000 to $200,000. The application is available until June 21st through the Interior Department's website. Get ready to watch some of your favorite Native actors on the screen and on the court. Netflix's upcoming film Res Ball follows a Native high school basketball team who has to persevere for a shot at the state championship. Director Sidney Freeland adapted the coming-of-age sports drama with Reservation Dogs showrunner Sterling Harjo. The film was inspired by Michael Powell's critically acclaimed nonfiction sports novel Canyon Dreams that is rumored to have influenced top NBA teams and coaches throughout the years. Deadline released the ensemble cast, which includes some notable Native actors such as Praise Amber Midthunder, Reservation Dogs Dallas Goldtooth, as well as Dark Winds Kiowa Gordon and Jessica Matten. Production is underway in New Mexico on the Navajo Nation with the permission and support of local tribal nations. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Matika Wilbur is an author, photographer, and podcast host. Her latest endeavor is the book Project 562. The book is a collection of photographs and interviews with people from over 500 federally recognized tribes. ICT's Paris Wise has this interview.
So you are the author and photographer of this book, Project 562, which is hitting shelves today. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really exciting.
What is Project 562?
Well, Project 562 is a year, I started in 2012. It's taken me many, many years of traveling around the country with the goal of visiting more than 562 federally recognized tribes in the United States. When I started the project, that was the original goal. And then as time went on, I also would visit with, urban Native communities, with international Native communities, with tribes that are still fighting for recognition. The plenary power of Congress is always in flux. And so I spent 8 years. I started in Washington and went to Oregon and California, what is now known as Oregon and California, and around the country, really, in circles multiple times, and into Alaska several times. And I photographed about 1,200 people, and I went to about 450 tribal communities, and I interviewed my subjects and talked with folks about a wide range of topics, from sovereignty to self-determination, nation building, environmental justice, climate justice. We talked about Indigenous feminisms and rematriation and decolonization. And, we had conversations about love and death and trauma and healing and, everything in between. So the book that's coming out this week is a collection of those stories and interviews that are collated into what we're calling profiles.
Wow, well, what a journey. I mean, you even sold everything you owned, you got rid of your apartment. What was that decision-making process and why you wanted to embark on this?
I didn't have enough funding to be on the road and to also keep an apartment. And so I had to kind of make the decision, which was one or the other. So in the beginning, I spent quite a bit of time in my Honda. I traveled initially in a Honda, and I relied on the kindness of Indian country. I slept on couches and went to community functions, and it was really supported by the community. And then as time went on, I was able to gather more support. We launched a second Kickstarter. Foundations decided to support the work that I was doing, and then I was able, to upgrade to living in an RV, which was definitely, van life was a lot of fun. That's how I did it.
This book is, photography. It's a physical book. Why was that the format you chose to tell these stories?
I, over the years, have worked in several different mediums. I had a blog for many years that I published on weekly. On my Project 562 website, we published hundreds of entries. I had a YouTube channel for a while, and I think we made about 70 films, short films. And I also have a podcast called All My Relations. And it's really an incredible platform. We have a lot of listeners. We just reached the 1 million listener threshold. So that's really exciting to have a podcast to discuss relationality and all its complexity. And I've also, with this project, developed curriculum. So we have, like a 40-page curriculum guide that accompanies the publication of the book. And, the book is, a really great, tangible, it's like a tangible object that I can give to people that really encapsulates so many different stories and people that I've encountered along the way. Of course, I've also done exhibitions, right? I have an exhibition up right now in Santa Monica. That's a 72-piece collection that will be traveling and going to New Orleans and then to Michigan. And so that's another exhibition, it's been in exhibition form several times in several different locations. But yeah, the book is certainly a new vessel to carry the stories, and I'm pretty excited about it.
As a really accomplished storyteller, you mentioned you had already published preliminary content for this project, and of course your All My Relations podcast is incredible. What do you really want people to take away from this book?
The book is for me is what I think of as like my love letter to Indian country. It's all of these incredible stories, and really it's a time capsule, right? Because these are people that I photographed 7 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and they represent people where they were at on that day of their journey. For me, I started this project because I want our children to have the opportunity to see themselves reflected properly. I think that it's wildly unjust that our students don't have the opportunity to open up a textbook, a 500-page book that has adequate representation of our people. And, I started this project for that very reason, because I was a teacher at the tribal school of my res, because I wanted to be able to provide a resource to my own students that could show them how incredibly beautiful and intelligent and resilient and thriving and human, right, we are, and in all of the many ways that and forms that we come in as Indigenous people, right? We're not a monolith, and so we deserve to see the uniqueness and celebrate our own people. Our children need that. And so for me, when I made this book, I made it for that purpose. And I feel, blessed and humbled and honored to have been able to bear witness to so many incredible people and stories and communities, and to get to share some of that with people.
Diné people believe, like many tribes, that children are sacred. That theme comes to light in the novel called Healer of the Water Monster. In the book, it's up to a young boy named Nathan to save the day. Take a look at this interview with the author, Brian Young.
Nathan is such an amazing character because he represents the idea of masculine care and compassion. And when I was writing Nathan, especially in the revising process, because I rewrote this book 7 times throughout its entire process, I approached Nathan's character with the idea that his superpower is being kind and being compassionate to those around him. And especially in a lot of Indigenous communities, young males are encouraged to kind of just bottle up our emotions and to not exhibit any type of compassion towards other beings. So when I was writing Nathan, that was always a guiding philosophy of his character.
What I love about Nathan is that he takes a pretty gutsy decision of deciding to spend the summer to live with his grandmother. So he has no cell service, running water, or electricity. Tell us about that.
So that was actually kind of based on my childhood. My mom would often send me to my grandparents' place. Originally, I am from Saratoga, so Sawmill and Fort Defiance, Arizona. And my grandparents lived in Sawmill, and we had cattle out in Noslini. So often when I get sent to my grandma's place, we go all the way to Nos, which in that community, there is no infrastructure, there's no running water, there's no electricity. So often my grandparents would tell me the traditional stories, which would eventually influence my book, Healer of the Water Monster. And while it can be boring, there is also a lot of, I don't want to say magic, but definitely there's a lot of special qualities to living in that environment, especially like you have to have a really strong relationship with the people around you. And I'm very fortunate that my grandparents and I were very close.
Tell us about the water monster and its place in your traditional culture.
Of course. So in my traditional culture, we have what's called Hajine Bachanet, or the emergence story. We believe that we are currently in the fourth world, and in the third world is where water monsters come from. I've also heard the interpretation that we're in the fifth world, so I just want to give a quick shout out to those people who have that as part of their upbringing. But the way I was told by my grandparents is that we're in the fourth world. And in the third world, it was completely ruled by Mother Water Monster. And after the first beings, first man, first woman, first turkey, first coyote, first everything, they kidnapped one of Mother Water Monster's infants, and that caused her to raise the water levels, and we had to escape her wrath by climbing up a tall reed into the ceiling and eventually merge into the fourth world. So my book references that storyline pretty much at the very beginning, but I also say in my book that water monsters followed the first beings into the fourth world and reside near or in bodies of waters in Diné, or the traditional homelands of the Navajo. And with my book, I also say that with their songs, they're able to protect the bodies of water, such as ponds, rivers, lakes, you name it, they protect it. And so Nathan comes across Pond, this water monster, and this particular water monster has been sick for about 30 years. And as a result, there's been a drought in the area for 30 years, and it's up to him to heal the water monster named Pond.
The sequel, Heroes of the Water Monster, will be released next month. Will Nathan still be a character in that book?
Yes, his journey still continues, and I am just really excited for people to read it. Nathan does some amazing things with water. If you are familiar with the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, Nathan essentially becomes a waterbender, and he has to use his abilities to manipulate water to help the powerful Yatoh Ba'ani, another water monster, find a modern enemy that is stealing water from all across the Nipakeya.
Brian, I want to talk about the publisher that you worked with. Tell us about that.
Of course. So I'm very fortunate to have been brought on to the publishing team called Heart Drum, which is the first Native focus imprint of a Big Five, I think it might be Big Four at this point, Big Five publishing company. And it's a very special, very wonderful community of Native writers devoted to writing to young Native children. And my book was one of the first books that was published by Heart Drum. And there are so many beautiful, wonderful stories alongside here the water monsters, such as Christine Day's I Can Make This Promise, Cynthia Leightick Smith, who is a legend in Native literature for young readers. She has a book with Heart Drum called Sisters of the Neversea, which is a Native interpretation of the Peter Pan story. It's amazing. I highly recommend everyone watch it or read it. So yes, Heart Drum's the first Native focus imprint of one of the Big Five.
Turtle Mountain Ojibwe citizen Denise Lajimodiere is North Dakota's first Indigenous poet laureate. She's published many award-winning books of poetry and is a scholar on the history of Native American boarding schools. I interviewed her earlier this month. Take a look. What does this honor mean to you?
Well, I think it's important that I'm the first Native poet for North Dakota. Growing up, I didn't have mentors. I've been writing poetry since I wrote my first poem when I was 10 years old. So I hope to be a mentor for those Native students watching and listening to me throughout the next 2 years, that they can be poets and they can be published. So I think it's very important, and it's very much an honor to represent my tribe and, of course, also North Dakota.
Tell us about the process of learning how you were selected for this position. Did it come as a surprise?
Well, no, it was a bit of a process. For North Dakota, we go through the state legislature. So I helped. Senator Ted Mathern from Fargo. He helped me develop a resolution, and then he brought it to the state legislature. It first went through the Senate, and that was in January, and we had to testify, and friends came and testified, and I was there in person to testify. And then end of February, there's something called crossover, and it crossed over to the House in March, the first week in March, and we went through the same process all over again. I testified, and friends testified, and then they wanted an amendment put in. So then it wasn't until the end of March that I woke up to messages and congratulations and so on. So yeah, so it was a 3-month-long process.
And do you know yet what kinds of responsibilities you'll take on in this role?
Yeah, the previous poet laureate, who was a mentor to me, Dr. Larry Y. Woody, he was in the position for nearly 30 years, and it was in perpetuity. So right now, and he passed away last year. So right now, I'm working with the Kim Kanakau, the State Council of Arts, and we're working together to figure out just what exactly our duties are, my duties might be. But of course, it's just to share the beauty and of reading and writing poetry. I hope to do some workshops. I hope to visit schools, or be invited to visit schools, or do poetry readings at libraries and so on. So we're still sort of working out exactly what my duties would be.
Can you tell us about what first inspired you to become a writer when you first started?
Yeah, I think when you're a poet or a writer, you can't not write. So like I said, I've been writing since I was 10 years old, my first poem, and then I was published in high school. I took a creative writing class. For me, it was started out writing a lot about sort of trauma. Growing up on the reservation, when we left to Portland during relocation in the 50s, growing up as the only Native person in an all-white schools. I experienced a lot of racism, and so did my family. So a lot of my poems has to do with just healing. They're just a lot of personal healing. So a lot of personal stories. So that's what poetry has helped me, and I hope to share that also with whoever I speak to in the next 2 years.
Speaking of healing, we know that the boarding school era is something that we're hearing stories about from across Indian country. How does your work highlight boarding schools in North Dakota?
Well, I became interested in boarding schools listening to my parents talk about their experience at boarding schools, and I interviewed my grandfathers and their experiences. I interviewed them in the 80s when they were in their 80s. So I heard some pretty horrific stories, and also we relocated to Portland, and my father was sent from North Dakota to Chemawa, Oregon. So as a professor, I decided to do a qualitative interview study about boarding school survivors. So then that developed into my book, Stringing Rosaries. So that was, about a 10-year process of just writing that book. And after Kamloops happened, our relatives across the medicine line told media, well, you better take a look at what's happened in the United States. The same thing happened there. So between my book, Secretary Deb Haaland being in place, and the National Boarding School Healing Coalition, became more of a national awareness of boarding schools. Now, as a professor, I've been doing a lot of talks about my research to other universities and so on the last 10 years. And most of the time, very few people knew about the boarding school era. I had a producer call from California, and when they got online, they go, "We just heard about boarding schools 2 weeks ago." So I just go, "Oh my goodness." But I don't blame them. I said, because it's not in the history books. We weren't even written into the history books. So it's been, I've done probably over 60 interviews in the last 2.5 years since Kamloops, and I just got a call from a producer this morning who's starting to work on a boarding school show, TV show or movie. So it's very heartening for me to see that, what my people, when I interviewed the people, they said, please tell the world what happened to us. So I will continue doing that through these interviews and through books, and in my poetry also. I have quite a few boarding school poems.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.